When we now fully enter in through Leo season, through gate number 31, the gate of influence, we're going to see a pattern throughout Leo season that is really focusing on the fifth house of creativity, romance, pleasure. And as we go through our journey at this time, we're going to be spending some time again up in that throat center, really getting clear on the power of communication, how we're communicating to ourselves, how we're metabolizing energy, what we are manifesting, so what we are bringing into the world of form, and taking some time in the heart of the summer months, which is Leo season and its element of fire, by really paying attention on what influences us, how we tend to forget what is in our highest good, how we are now needing to move forward to get a really good look at where are you headed and is this in alignment to where you truly want to go. We're going to spend some time near the end of Leo season jumping up into the mind, into that third eye awareness again, to really look at how we justify our actions, our behaviors, our patterns, and see if we can really break free from that by ending off the season with having a deeper commitment into the self, dropping back down into your sacral center, which is really all about that umbilical cord connections, some of those deep-seated patterns, and your life force energy. How do you want to use the power of your life force energy to move you through Leo season to really step you into the position of being your own leader, being very mindful with your actions and your choices, looking at guidance. So, what are you being guided by? Seeking to understand, not to be understood, and developing a high level of devotion to yourself. So today we're going to step through the doorway of gate number 31. We are going to learn about the shadow of arrogance, the dilemma of choice, moving towards the gift aspect of leadership, and reaching for the highest light aspect in here, which is known as the Sooty of humility. So the gate of influence through the teachings of the I Ching teaches us that mutual attractions and your readiness to interrelate allow you to express your natural influence. It is important to relate from your own independent version of reality. So this gateway is really leading us back in towards the self, in towards your expression, your voice, to really get clear on if you are using the power of communication to share the truth as you know it, your version of the world, your unique expression, and not just repeating the words of somebody else or adopting a belief system that may or may not be your truth. So we really want to question ourselves as we go through these doors as to what am I being influenced by? And is that truly serving the highest good? When we look at the human design chart, we're going to find that up in the throat center. And we've been spending a lot of time in the throat center as we moved, first of all, through Gemini season and then into Cancer season, and now ending it out with Leo season. So there's so many aspects of the throat center and all the languages that have ever been spoken find their way through that communication center. And we all have a desire to be seen, to be understood, to express ourselves. And all the energy within your body graph, all of your different centers, those shapes, are trying to find their way out through your voice, through your expression. So you're going to want to check your human design chart to see if you have gate number 31 already circled. If so, this is a big part of your design. If you don't have Gate 31 circled, but you're joining us as part of the inner alchemy through the mandala wheel, we are all receiving this energy properties as a collective at this time. So this is your opportunity to really feel into the energy, to get to know another aspect of yourself. And it's coming through a voice of, I lead or not, because we have the free will choice to choose. And it's really about the influential elected leader. So it's having somebody recognize you and putting you in that place of leadership. And that might be in leading other people. It might be by having others just become very aware of how you live out your life, and maybe that influences them in a certain direction. And we all have that element of leadership within ourselves. It's just that a lot of us are unconscious as to the effect that we do have upon others that we are around, what we project out, what we say, what we do, what we don't do. And it's really the thought here of leading by example. In this case, through gate number 31, that voice of I lead or I lead not, it really carries the energy of logical leadership. So it has some really good facts, some figures, common sense is really important here, and it speaks to the way forward. So it carries a authoritative quality to it that's just really hard to ignore. There's a self-assurance when it's coming through that gate when it is clear on what it is leading towards. So when you're expressing from that place and you know the direction forward and you have a lot of logic, a lot of common sense, other people hear that. And because they hear that assurance and that authoritative quality in your voice, they're often very influenced by what they are getting back. So they might fall into line, they might agree and come in the same direction that you are. You, excuse me, you might cause them to really reflect upon themselves. Hmm. Sorry, I had to pause for a moment there to take a drink of water. So, when you are really speaking from that voice and you're stepping into that role of allowing your own expression to come through, how you are leading or choosing not to go in a certain direction, recognizing that others are influenced by your voice, by what you decide to do or don't do. And they're either going to fall into step with agreeing that, they're going to come back into themselves to do some self actualization, or they might just tend to follow blindly. So there's many layers to the power of influence, and an opportunity here to do a check-in with your own voice and maybe acknowledging the influence that you do have around those in your immediate environment, whether that's your children, your spouse, your coworkers. And we can use that power of influence in both ways. We can use it to get what we want, so in an unhealthy way, and we can also use it as an opportunity to bring people deeper inside themselves to become their own leader. So there is a natural energy that is in this gate that is really kind of pushing up towards leading the self and helping us to step into that role of being a director, being a guide, being an influencer, and taking on the qualities of a true leader, which we're going to really talk about when we get to the gift aspect within this gate. So, as we start this journey, some areas of reflection here is, what are you influencing through your words, your actions, your behavior? Is that in alignment to your truth? And is that what you want to be recognized for? This is also part of what is known as the channel of the alpha. So again, you're going to want to check your human design chart to see if you have this channel already. And it is really leading the connection from the throat down into what is known as the center of self. The center of self can be seen as the high heart within your human design chart. It carries the 4 directional gates in there that are related to the seasons, the changes, and it also has the 4 love gates that are an aspect of the whole itself. So this is our magnetic connection to the divine, to that higher expression of who we are that keeps us and pulls us into that alignment. So think of that as always course correcting ourselves through learning opportunities, deeper reflections within ourselves, and really providing opportunities through Earth School to grow, to learn, and to evolve. So in this channel connection, it is drawing its energy from gate number 7. Gate number 7 is one of the directional gates, and it's all about looking forward. It is the role of uniformity, meaning trying to get everybody on the same page, going in the same direction in order to make that progress. So if we're heading forward towards a better vision of the future, then it really becomes the responsibility of the role each and every one of us play in that collective. In this case, there is some energy here supporting the alpha. The alpha is the leader of the pack. So when you think about wolves and nature, there's a genetic connection where somebody in that animal chain has the gene to be an alpha. So genetically, there's a tendency within the auric field, if you have this channel, to have that quality in you. There is a destiny to be the leader of the pack, but the pack could be the leader of yourself. You might identify as that lone wolf who is always going in a different direction than the masses of humanity, but yet you know beyond know that that is the right direction for you. You may not be aware of how influential you are to others that are watching you go and live out your life and do the things that you know are very important to you, but you are sparking some kind of awareness within them. You might be the leader within your own family. You might be a leader within your own organization, your social group. There's many different ways to kind of look at our concept of leadership, but it's really knowing that you have some high qualities within you. And we all have these potentials for great leadership, but there's certain individuals among us who just naturally come in to claim that position. There is something in your soul's contract that you came here to learn, and this is one of the ways that it's needed to express its full potential in order to keep you in alignment to that destined blueprint. So a lot of times, when you are the alpha, when you're seen as the leader of the pack, well, other people have put you in that position. So it is elected by those around you. It could be somebody nominating you to take a certain position. It could be getting the recognition that you need at work, your skill set. It might be your social group coming to you because they recognize you have certain qualities and you can offer them assistance. It might be your children always choosing to come to you with their problems and their questions. There's so many ways that this can unfold, but it's really recognizing, how powerful our energy field is, how much we are magnetically attracting people our way, that they resonate with whatever it is that you are expressing through your voice, your influence, your ability to lead or not to be led. And that is noticed by others. So in this case, when you are really stepping into that channel of the alpha, you're not afraid to stand on your own 2 feet and walk in the direction of your truth. That is just vibrating out. It comes as a divine confidence. And that is noticed by other people. You can literally walk into a room and heads will turn because there's something in them that is taking note of you. There's a quality in that electromagnetic field that is drawing attention towards itself. And that is really the awareness of the power of influence. And again, we can look out to humanity to see how that can be manipulated to serve the individual, or it can be used for the highest good to help lead in a new direction towards a better future. You might find it really, really easy yourself to see the way ahead. And this is where that aspect of common sense comes into play. You might have a heightened sense of common sense for yourself. So it might be very easy for you to express through logic why you should go in a certain direction, why you should get involved with a certain something, why something should be happening right now, but you're not necessarily the one to carry out the work. So this is very well suited to becoming the director, the project manager. The book talks about being the general, right? So providing the instructions for the masses, for the troops, for the family, for the workplace, whatever that is, to then carry those things out. When you are jumping in to get the work done, it's really hard to maintain the role of the leader if you are busy and focused on a certain task. So it's only when we rise ourselves up to that higher vantage point and you're able to see the movings and the workings of everything that is going on that you can really step into that position of being able to do your best work. So be very mindful if you have a tendency to micromanage, which is a control mechanism within yourself to explore, or if you are being persuaded to do things and to jump into the fray of the work where your inner knowing is saying, it's better for me to take a step back. And a lot of times that comes from conditioning again, where we're told that we have to jump in there and get into the fray of the activity. That alpha wolf, that alpha aspect of the divine quality is always here to keep seeing what is coming. And there's a responsibility in that to be very attuned through that high heart, through that magnetic connection to that way forward, to be listening to its own inner guidance that is coming from a higher source when you're in those higher vibrating energies that is then carrying out orders through you. So it's not that we always have somebody who is the leader and other people are the workers. That leader is also a worker to a higher leader. So we're all a follower and we're all a leader. It's really about what are you listening to? Why are you listening to that? Why are you walking in that direction? Is that for your highest good? And is it in resonance to your own inner knowing? So whether you have this channel or you are influenced by this channel, it's really important to know how the energy shows up for you so that you can be more self-aware and make decisions that are coming from your inner guidance system. We're going to step now into the teachings of the gene keys. So the gene key comes along and literally opens up the gateway for us. It gives us the aspects of the inner alchemy. So it provides what the shadow is, the lower vibrating energy, the learning opportunity, which is our dilemma, the gift aspect to really learn how to harness for ourselves. And it sets us sights high to reach that Sudi, the highest light aspect within those gates. So like anything, we have these bands of frequency. And we're always going to go between being in the shadow, which can also be seen as the seed. That's the seed of potential. And then we grow. So we grow through our dilemma, which is in this case choices, our personal choices. We rise into the light of the new day, which is really getting into that gift of leadership. And when we finally come into our bloom, our flowering, that full potential, that is the Sudi. That is the divine expression coming through the individual vessel to be shared with the rest of the world. So we are always in a stage of going from the seed to the growth to the highest flowering within ourselves. And we're always going to find the gift within the shadow and the shadow within the gift. Everything mixes and matches because we live in a duality. Everything exists when you're given the ingredients for you to create the recipe of yourself. That is the free will choice that we have here on earth. So we're going to start by looking at the shadow of arrogance and that dilemma of choice. And we are extracting teachings from the Book of the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. I do highly encourage you to get a copy of this if it is available to you. And in the words of Richard, it says that our arrogance is based upon our belief that we can think, talk, and act our way out of the shadow frequencies, when in fact, those very frequencies are created through our intellect. So that's where we start believing that we've got it. We can figure this all out. We can handle it. We know the way. And that's really speaking to the small self, taking the world very personally, trying to change somebody else's behavior, somebody else's destiny, knowing what is best for them. And we can really convince ourselves through the power of our mind why what we are doing is correct. We can convince ourselves to believe whatever it is that we want to believe to keep ourselves in our comfort zones, in our preferences, in our belief system. And that is all the shadow of arrogance. And that's where we see the dilemma of our choice coming in, because we all have the free will choice. But so often we give the power of our choice to someone else. We are conditioned in a world that teaches us how to think, how to act, how to behave, and we become puppets on a string to that collective shadow frequency. So we're learning to break away from that. And as you learn more about yourself, who you are, what do you believe in, you learn to ask those questions. You start to really examine your own belief systems and expand your vision to see, well, what else can I learn in that? The more you're going to really empower yourself. So we enter into this shadow of arrogance by humbling ourselves to say, well, we all are arrogant. To some level, we have this inside of ourselves. It is part of the human nature. So you're not here to get rid of the arrogance. You're here to learn, how does this play out in your life so that you can learn to then cultivate more of the gift qualities of leadership. So animals choose their leaders instinctively based upon one animal having the alpha gene, which marks it as the leader. That's the genetics that we were talking about. In humans, the alpha gene is present in the one that can manipulate others through language. So we are in the throat center, we are in the expression of who we are. And when we look out into the world today, we can see that those who are in powerful roles as influencers know how to use language and to use it to their advantage. So this gateway really is about teaching us the power of language, which is words and it's beyond words. It's body language, it's expression, it's tone, it's voice. There's many aspects to that. Language is the medium through which frequency can be conveyed, meaning it's how we are understood, how we get other people to understand. And at a low frequency, that shadow level, language becomes the ultimate programming tool. And it blinds others to the truth by locking them into a lower frequency level. And there are certain cultures around the world where their government decides exactly what kind of communication is coming through. They block out communication from the rest of the world. So if you grow up in that culture, you are only fed, you're only provided with the language they want you to receive in order to mold you to be what they want you to be. And to some extent, all of our school systems do that. Our workplaces do that. There are personal agendas and narratives to what we are teaching others, what we're sharing with others, how we form those belief systems. So you very likely are a child that was born into a world that was fed a certain program through language that then shaped your belief systems. And you, as this individual taking this course, now has to question that. You now have access to really explore those pieces within yourself that maybe logically, now that you are starting to contemplate, maybe there's another side to that. Maybe there's something else to explore. And that really brings us into the teachings of last week when we first came in to Leo season through the gate of the Wanderer and that encouragement to get really curious. It's only through having your own experiences and immersing yourself in different cultures, philosophies, belief systems, getting to know other people, and then sharing your experiences, sharing your stories, listening to their stories. That's one of the only ways that we can break through this dense language field that we have been programmed into and start opening up to the richness of true communication. Hitler was another example of how we saw an entire culture start to believe and adopt a mindset of a superior race to the detriment of others. So we can see how that language really becomes a toxic vibe out into the world. I don't quite know what the word is for that, but it really does become like this toxic cumulative cloud that puts people into that narrative of the story where it becomes so thick and so dense that they can't see beyond that. That is how we can get so corrupt within our minds that we then entrap ourselves into those frequencies. Now, at its highest frequency, language becomes the voice of divine expression. So when you are operating from a high frequency, when you've learned to open yourself up, to allow light, love, that divine expression to work through you, you as the vessel of that expression, it cannot lie. So it removes all fear of having to use its voice, and it may not even need to use its voice. It's the sheer presence of its energy that other people gravitate towards. And we have beautiful examples of leadership throughout the world. We're going to see when we get to the gift aspect, I share some of the teachings of Gandhi, who really taught about peace. And you can see in people's eyes, they have light in their eyes, they have laughter in their skin, in their face. And even though they are working in some very serious conditions and they're dealing with some very heart-wrenching issues, there's a peace about them. They know what exists on the other side of that suffering. So they are the ones that have come to lead the way. Beyond the problem is the solution. Beyond the suffering is our heaven. So it really is beautiful to know that we have all different frequencies of this. We as individuals, we are always in that pendulum swing between our own lower frequency where we trap ourselves into the conditioning field and those moments of really tapping in and feeling the grace of divine expression either come through us or we're exposed and it comes through us from another individual. But knowing that we are all things because we are human. So, really looking at your own language, your own expression, it's more than just your voice. You have two ears. So, what are you listening to? What are you tuning into? What is your mind speaking into the heart of you? What are you feeding yourself, and what are you taking in from the environment around you? And we do live in a collective field right now that is very fear-based. We are in those shadow frequencies. So it's learning to get yourself up to breathe the fresh air, which is why that alpha usually walks ahead. It gives itself space and time to think, to contemplate, to gather its strength. And then it goes back and engages with others to share what it is choosing to personally do. And maybe others are influenced and want to join that as well. So it's knowing that it's okay for you to step out before you step in so that you can get the clarity of what is influencing you and why are you being influenced in that direction. At the shadow level, humans are completely convinced by the mass programming of the society in which they live and its collective history, beliefs, and culture. So arrogance becomes the belief that we as little individuals have any kind of independent control over reality at all. And what that means is, quite often we have an opinion of how somebody else's life could be better. And we get very invested in other people's lives, and we have a lot to say about what they should do. We can get really frustrated when they don't do as we say they should do. We get emotionally tied in to how they are living their life. We arrogantly feel that we have a right to tell them what to do and expect them to do what we tell them what to do. That is arrogance. We don't know what is going on in their minds. We don't know their fears. We don't know what they came here to overcome. We don't know their soul's contract. We can't change the events in their lives, what is destined to be laid out before them, but we believe that we can change someone else. And it really is a distraction. And we learned about distractions again in last week's class, where we are so focused on the external that we're not looking at the internal. We're not looking at ourselves. So, in the contents of the shadow of arrogance, the modern world that we see around us is nothing more than a mental construct. So, created by the mind that is generated out of billions and billions of words. We breathe the world around us into form. We speak it into form. We plan it into form. The buildings represent the culture of the people in that area. It represents the belief systems of the people in that area. Whether things are closed doors, open doors, they're high, they're low, everything comes into form because it is spoken out that way and the masses come together to create it. This is also our thoughts. Our thoughts become our belief system that then becomes our reality. And it's the reality that we create at the collective level. So it's also being mindful that you very likely can pick up on the thought frequencies of others. So it's taking the time to question, is that really my belief system? Am I buying into a fear story? Am I buying into the self-preservation story? Am I stuck in the doom and gloom story? So Richard Rudd teaches us that at the shadow frequency, we're all trapped in this world wide web of words. So we do, we have the World Wide Web. We have access to so much information. And we can get lost down the rabbit hole of whatever it is that has captured our attention, whatever it is that is influencing us. And it's only when we understand that we are being influenced and stop to question, what am I being influenced by, that we can then intercept that dilemma of choice and choose what is in your highest good and not become a slave to the programming. So it's important to know that language tends to control us. And there's that old saying of sticks and stones will hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I disagree with that. I think words really do impact one's self-esteem, self-worth, value, language, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. There's a lot of competition out in the world. There's a lot of narrative that says we have to be somebody, we have to look a certain way, we have to speak a certain way. If you're smart, if you're not smart, there's so many ways that we have allowed ourselves to be defined by language. And language, the concepts taken and put into stories, shared instructions, concepts, and even going back thousands and thousands of years, still have the power to influence entire nations and people. So the Bible is a good example of that. There is many teachings that over time, and different religions have kind of gotten their hold on different areas of work, and they've made it to influence what it is that they want to influence. So some of us may have been taught, well, there's a heaven or a hell, and if you don't do certain things, you're gonna go to hell. And you have to do certain things so that you can go to heaven. Well, there's the power of the words that then really put pressure on people to do a certain something. Cultures have the same way. There's sometimes a lot of emphasis put on the honor or the dishonor of the family. You have to have a male child or your genes will stop. Your legacy will stop. Males are more important than females. Females can only do certain things. Males are expected to do this. If you do that, you will bring disgrace upon your entire family. There's indications throughout society where this plays out. In India, they have the caste system. They've been trying to rid this for years, but it is so deeply ingrained into their culture and their history. And their caste system, literally, when a child is born, they are placed in a classification caste system based on what their parents do. So if their parents are garbage collectors, the child's a garbage collector. It has no way out of that. It is literally dependent upon what it is born into, and there is nothing that generation after generation after generation can do to break out of that cycle because the culture around it feeds into the narrative that that is correct. So in this case, it's really learning how complex this shadow of arrogant is, how our choices to keep maintaining the same things that have been done over and over and over again really solidify and create our future. And it's not until we really learn to wake up to what we are being influenced by and really question, is that for the highest good? We can't really break out of that chain. Now, that baby born into that caste system can learn to make peace with whatever it's put into by learning its own self-respect and dignity and compassion. And that soul chose that experience. That was part of that learning lesson. It's not a punishment. It's there to learn the highest aspects of love and whatever life presents in front of it. We all are. It's really learning that other people's opinions do not define who you truly are. So, as a little fun fact, because I was curious, I did a little Google research myself. And according to Google, there are over 7,000 languages, unique dialects spoken throughout the world. And we wonder why we have a problem communicating, being understood, seeking to understand. There's a lot of opportunity there to really enrich ourselves by learning what somebody means when they speak a word and not jumping to the conclusion that we understand what it is they are expressing. Miscommunication or misplacing a word literally has the power to start a war or create a divide. And that's at the macro level, but it's also at the micro level, our level. So even think of having a conversation yourself, and maybe things didn't quite come out the way that you intended them to. They were taken out of context, or they were heard in a different way by somebody else that created some hurt stories. Or perhaps somebody said something to you and you really took it into your heart. You fed it by your own memories. It caused some great pains. Maybe it broke up a friendship. Maybe it escalated into something more. And perhaps later you found out another truth and you realized that was just a miscommunication. How many family feuds or cultural feuds have been created where nobody knows anymore what they're really feuding about? They just know that they don't like those people. They don't know why. They can't tell you why. They just don't like those kinds of people. Arrogance is a kind of addiction to words and language rather than the frequency of intention that hides between and behind the words. And this is where we start using the power of communication. It's very arrogant to assume you know what somebody else means because you have your definition of what you think they mean, but is that their truth? And when we really lean in to listen to somebody and to ask the higher self to help us understand, you start listening to what's not being said. You're listening to the spaces, to the pauses. Maybe you're catching some emotion. Maybe you're catching some changes in tone and frequency. So you're listening beyond what is actually being said. And then you're being curious and you're asking, I noticed that you kind of got choked up when you were expressing that. Is everything okay? Or maybe you're picking up on some heightened sense of excitement towards a word. You get curious. You're like, ooh, it sounds from the tone of your voice that you really had a great experience. I'm curious to know more. We have such potential when we move ourselves away from the arrogance of thinking we know it all, we understand it all, to recognizing that we don't really know anything. And what a beautiful opportunity there is to learn, to come together, to communicate, to have rich experiences through allowing the sharing of dialogue, allowing the freedom of expression in yourself, in others, and clearing up the air before there can be the miscommunication, the misunderstanding, the hurtfulness. Learn to express that. That hurt me. Can we talk about what you mean by that? How much more powerful would be that dialogue than taking the hurt, feeding the hurt, creating this great divide in the relationship, and maybe or maybe not ever going back to heal that? And our world is full of those moments, but we can choose to narrow the gap in ourselves by opening up and be very responsive to allowing communication to come both ways, getting out of our way to allow for the way. There's always two sides to any shadow energy. We have a repressive nature where we keep everything inside the self, and we have a reactive nature where we really send it out into the external world. In a repressive state, this is all about deferring. It's passing it on to somebody else. So it comes from a false humility. It is purely coming from fear. And that's where we see people deferring their power to somebody else. So they deliberately put themselves beneath another. I don't know, let me go ask so and so. What do you think? What should I do? That's the way that the policy is. That's the way my boss said it to do it. I would help you, but I'm not allowed. So it's always deferring away from itself. It's not taking any ownership or accountability. It is fearful of making its own decision. So it places all the power with somebody or something else, like a system, which makes them go underneath that. They put themselves lower than their divine nature. And at a deep level, it's coming from a place of really caring what somebody else thinks of them. So they're afraid to be thought of as arrogant, knowing it all, making the decisions, being the leader, being the boss. So they will defer all power to something or someone else so that it's not them making that decision. So it's an act of disempowering the self. From a reactive nature, this is where we see that we're very scornful. And think of Leo and think of the lion just raw, kind of roaring out there with anger. There's a lot of anger that comes from it. And because there is an element of deep logic and common sense that comes from this gate, and it can see what is happening in others and how other people are just letting themselves be manipulative, how they maybe don't have a backbone, they're just following blindly, and why don't they just stand up for themselves? And they get so invested in that anger that they actually start to be scornful and look down upon humanity. And they hold a disrespect for humanity because they will also manipulate other people because they know they can, which then reinforces why they should just disrespect people and why they're angry at people. And that keeps feeding into that cycle of looking down upon humanity. Literally, it's looking at aspects of the self and hating on the self. Because if humanity is one whole, then it is mad at part of itself. It is mad that it can be manipulated. It can be mad that it's not listening. It comes from a perhaps divine anger within that has not made peace with those individual stages of learning and growth, humanity's stages of learning and growth, and punishes humanity because of it. So it is taking perhaps some higher awareness, but using that to create more of the shadow. And a lot of time that can be unconscious because you've done some work on yourself, because you've hidden a certain level. There can very well be, and we see this in the world of spirituality all the time, the looking down at others and thinking that you are better than them because you know what's right for them. And laughing and scoffing at them or being very disrespectful to them, cutting them out, right? There's many ways to be scornful. Turning your back on somebody. I don't know if you've ever had an experience where other people have literally turned their back from you because they have a story, an arrogance that they don't associate with those kind of people, whatever that story is. And when we look at that from a higher perspective, I mean, we can see all these different incidences that are showing us as kindergartens in a sandbox, right? We are still very young in our evolution. And if we can see ourselves as 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds that are just trying to figure out who we are, how we fit in, what's outside of that little self, how do we learn to get along? And we approach that with love and compassion, then we can really move through the energy within ourselves that is both repressive and defers our power away to somebody else. And it is scornful. It does get mad and upset and lashes out to other people. We do both of those. So our job is really to come to the center point as much as we can because we're human. We are so perfectly imperfect, but it's learning how to course correct, catching yourself when you're on one side or the other side, bringing you back into center, which really is stopping to pause, coming back into the center of you to question what is influencing me and why. What is influencing my choices, my decisions, my emotions, my behavior? What am I feeling? And that's another piggyback off of last week's lesson because we learned how we distract ourselves through our five senses, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, what we touch. Beyond that is our capacity to feel. Our truth is in that feeling vibration that is connected to all things. So we're really learning how to come back into the self and doing the shadow work by bringing in more of the gift and feeding it more light and really slowing down to notice how it comes up for you and where it's playing out in your life and becoming very mindful, not becoming so reactive with one's decisions, but taking the time you need and claiming back the power of your free will choice. You can only ever be free when you have escaped language, when you are no longer a victim of your own mental constructs and words. This begins when you speak from the heart and not from the mind. The heart does not need to think about the words and their meaning. It expresses itself freely and from a place of deep honesty. So now we're moving into the gift of leadership. And here is Mahatma Gandhi, the teacher of India's non-violent independent movement against British rule. And I don't know a lot about Gandhi. I've heard of Gandhi, I've read a few things about Gandhi, but I really don't know the man of Gandhi. But what I do know when I'm looking through pictures is there's a similarity in his energy, in his auric field, in his leadership. And that's how the light shines in the eye. And the laughter comes from the eye. And there's a kindness that is in his auric field. There's an understanding in his auric field. There is just this bigger than himself presence that draws the attention. when it is resonating from the heart. And in this case, Gandhi stepped forward in a peace movement. And he stepped forward in a peace movement when the world, India at that time, was getting very violent. It was fighting, it was at war, but people were getting tired. They were getting tired of the hurt, the pain, the violence. They were asking for another way as a collective. And because of that asking for another way, a leader appeared. And Gandhi never saw himself as a leader. He didn't ask to be a leader, but there was something in his presence that when he attuned to the divine expression, it poured out into the world around him. And those that could hear his voice or see, feel, sense him were influenced by its teachings. And he was successful. Was his journey easy? No. He had to have incredible faith to be that alpha, to tune in and listen constantly for the direction from a higher power and to trust in the way forward. Even though at times I'm sure it felt like his safety was on the line, his survival was on the line, I imagine he would have had to face so many fears. And every time he did so, he strengthened faith. And when you get to that level of having such strong faith with your inner knowing, with your direction, that has such great power of influence and leadership that can literally change the course of evolution, the way of life for yourself, for others. It has such power in there. So the gift of leadership moves us from seeking personal recognition. The gift of leadership moves us from seeking personal recognition. I wanted to say that again. Control or wealth. And it uses its power of influence through its understanding and mastery of language to help others free themselves of their own conditioning. It's no longer about the little I. It's about understanding we are in this together. We are affected by this. We have the power to move towards change. It's not what can I get out of it. True leaders are chosen for their style, which means it's their frequency, their tone, their delivery. There's nothing special about Gandhi. He's a small little man. You know, when you are raised in a world that conditions us to believe that the definition of a man is to be tall and strong, right? That's how they depict a leader. Here is Gandhi that portrays everything but that image. But he wasn't chosen for what he looks like. He was chosen for his quality. The quality of his voice, his auric field, his delivery, his walking the talk. And we talked about, he probably had no desire to be a leader or see themselves as a leader. They are just purely being led by the heart. That heart has a natural desire to want to help others escape their own suffering in some way. And because of that, other people feel this is my way out. This is the answer. This is what I've been praying for. And instead of becoming that voice of fear, they become one with the divine expression. They use its influence through creativity and staying focused on our future evolution. So by listening to and acting from the heart, it senses what is coming into the world next. It's very receptive. The heart is open. The heart doesn't close when things get tough. It doesn't close when things feel painful. It stays open. It accepts all that is, and it allows it to move it into a deeper place of rising up to connect, to be taught, to be led, which in turn then comes out into the world of form to act as leadership for others. To do that, you got to be free of your own conditioning. The healer has to be healed first before it can heal others. Otherwise, you'll always have your own narratives to your own story, your own viewpoint. Your ego will be in the way. You have to remove your belief systems, your barriers, your triggers, your woundings. This is the job and the commitment to work on the self first. So the book also talks about branding. And we can look out to businesses in the world and see how they've created and they're defined by their brand. That is how they are known. That is the power of their influence. They can put a name on somebody that is famous on a certain object and everybody wants it because of that person's influence. If I buy that, then I'm going to be just like them. I have to wear a certain brand so that people think that I'm good enough, so that I have a level of status. We all have a way of branding ourselves. It's the qualities that we want the world to believe about us. But what are those qualities? And do you actually believe in them for yourself? So we get really honest with ourselves and how we are branding our image, how we're showing up, the way we're making an impact in the world, how we're leading into the world, how we are stepping forward with one foot at a time. That's your branding. Somebody is noticing you. Somebody is influenced by you. What are you leaving as your mark on humanity? What is your signature? Do you know your branding, or have you tried to be somebody else's branding? Have you been captured by the collective field, the worldwide web of words that have labeled you? Are you wearing a mask to create and maintain that label? So it's a really good exercise to start to become your own leader by stepping into your own brand. Who's the brand of you? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And let it come from the heart. Let it come from the divine expression, not from what the mind thinks that it should be. This is the heart expression. The 31st gift is a new era that is opening up before humanity. It is an era in which individual leadership is declining and the collective is beginning to lead itself. So as more and more people are waking up and they're questioning and they're asking themselves, is this right for me? They're starting to make choices and decisions in alignment to their truth. So it's a collective awakening. The collective is standing up and saying, that doesn't feel right. I'm not buying into that. They're not being so influenced anymore. You can't pull the wool over the eyes anymore. Secrets are being reviewed. More is being discovered, right? So there is power now in the everyday people. There's not so much power in one individual. We're seeing a collective rise in consciousness. And it really does start with yourself. It's not about leading anybody else. It's about your own personal leadership, your own personal empowerment, your own ascension. We're moving from the 3D into the 5th, into the 7th, but that is a process of your own awakening, removing your own conditioning. So the way to do that is by claiming responsibility for your own projections, your own level of influence, your thoughts. Why do you believe that? Why are you telling yourself that story? Your behavior, your actions. It's choosing to do the right things for the right reasons. And the only way to know that is to be more mindful, to slow down and really consider, who am I impacting and why? What is this decision costing me? So it's focused on healing itself. It's not focused on changing others. It realizes that everybody is here to do their own inner work, and they're all here to walk in their own shoes. So it brings all its energy back in towards the self to grow its own divine light. And it sees and it feels the light in others, and it recognizes that light to help draw out those aspects within somebody else. So it's not focusing on everything that's going wrong, it's feeding what is working. It's encouraging the other to keep rising, to not give up, that it's okay to make mistakes. It is very vulnerable in its own expression of sharing the mistakes that they've made because they're not perfect. It's an illusion to be perfect. So it comes from a great place of being able to laugh at oneself, to laugh at our humanness, to laugh at some of the antics we do, the behaviors that we do. It's no longer taking life so seriously. It realizes that the whole world is not orchestrating a divine plan to get at them. They realize that they're just part of life. And as just being part of life, well, shit happens. You go with the flow. You take it one step at a time. You tune in to sensing the correct direction for yourself. You walk in the way that you know beyond know to be your path. And if others follow, that's up to them. It's not your job to convince anybody that this is the way. It's your job to walk the way that is right for you. So it actually may feel that you are walking alone a lot of the time. And there's a lot of beauty and inner transformation that comes with walking by yourself to build a relationship with yourself, to come out on that other side knowing who you truly are. And then being able to share that beautiful journey with others that maybe you couldn't see in the beginning because it did walk you through being lonely, not knowing who you are, not feeling like there was any influence, not having a clear direction, right? When we're walking through the shadows and doing that inner work, it is not comfortable, but it is so worth it as you are picking up those pieces of yourself in your journey to your own self-actualization, to then find your divine confidence on the other side and know the truth of I am, the higher I am qualities. So that brings us to the Sudi of humility. True humility arises from the truth that you cannot ever do anything wrong. And how much time do we spend right now punishing ourselves? Can you believe in the truth that there is nothing that you could ever do wrong? Humility is the voice of the divine itself speaking. Such speech is pure transmutation. It uses words to indicate the path beyond words. That is the beauty of its paradox. It is the voice of unconditional love. When you can move yourself past words, past an idea of what you should be, how you should show up, and you allow yourself to just embrace the human life, the human journey, the ups, the downs, the everything's in betweens, really stepping into the feelings of, oh my God, this is hard, right? And there's other times where things appear to be easy. Finding your fragrance, your blossoming, your contribution to the collective without feeling like you have to be seen, you have to be heard, you have to do some kind of big monumental undertaking. It's really about noticing the power of our own influence by showing up, being the best you that you can be. And that doesn't mean perfection. It means being able to laugh at yourself, having honest conversations with yourself, laughing at yourself when you realize, oh my gosh, I just went back to that same old pattern again. Why did I do that? And when we come from those places in our conversations, we have those deep dialogues with others where we're sharing our stories and we're sharing our humbling moments, our falls from grace, our learning lessons, how we convinced ourselves that something was right only to find out that it was wrong, how we were so captivated by creating a certain image just to recognize, oh, man, did that ever drain the energy and just not feel right? When we get to those places of honest conversation from the heart and we allow other people to share them with us, there's such a beauty of deeper self-awareness. Recognizing where your energy is truly an expression of you, where it can be best applied, what creates the most joy, the most vitality, then you're clearing out your conditioning field. You're feeding into your auric field those vibrations of joy, happiness, understanding, compassion, wisdom, love. And that is where, just like Gandhi, the eyes start to light up. The face starts to get the lines of the laughter. The head is lift up. There's probably even that look of there's an inside joke. So they're not so caught off guard by somebody else's reactions or emotions or life events. It sees that as an opportunity of, ooh, here is something that is going to teach me to open my heart up even greater. And that really is the act of humility. We have no idea how loved we truly are. And it takes great courage to stay in the presence of love, to allow yourself to be loved, to forgive yourself, to seek to understand yourself, to accept all parts of yourself, and to just simply be human. You are a soul that came here to have a human experience. That is its divine purpose. That is the influence that you are putting upon the world as you are showing up as you're meant to be, guiding humanity towards that future where we come into a greater place of acceptance and understanding and the freedom to just be. So really be mindful to see if language, words, expression, do they have a barrier within your own energy, within your own mind? Is there something in there that you have been telling yourself that you're ready now to kind of sit with that and question and contemplate and say, is that true? Or is that a belief system that's been passed down generation after generation after generation that maybe now you're the one ready to change that story? Maybe you're willing to be the one to write your own chapter. So I send you all much love. This one was very, very deep. I would love to hear your comments, your own self-reflection in the area down below if that feels right to you. And I look forward to continuing our journey throughout Leo season. Passion, romance, creativity, and everything that element of fire brings to the light for us. Take care, everyone.